Welcome everyone to our second Valley Talk of the fall. I feel like we were just here. We had a great talk with Alex Bartlett, learning about the soup to nuts history of the Wissahickon. And tonight we are getting the buzz on beekeeping with David Harrod. And I think most of you know about FOW. David, you know us, right? Okay, all right. So, and I think almost everyone here is a member. Raise your hand if you're a member. Yay. If you're not a member, consider joining. Other way, this way, that way, whatever. I can't advance it tonight. All right. We will. We're going to solve this problem. Claire's going to come solve the problem. I'm going to introduce David. David is a dedicated beekeeper and active member of the Philadelphia Beekeepers Guild, where he plays a key role in promoting sustainable beekeeping practices and educating the community, that's us, about the vital role of bees in our ecosystem. With a deep passion for apiculture, David combines his expertise and enthusiasm to support local beekeepers, lead workshops, and advocate for bee-friendly policies. His commitment to fostering a thriving bee population reflects his broader dedication to environmental stewardship and community engagement. And I know bees are a topic we've all been buzzing about for years. How are the bees doing? You know, why we should be concerned with how they're doing. And David, I think, is going to tell us all that and more. And so I believe we have learned how to advance. We've established that we're all friends. And so I'm going to turn it over to David. And then I'll be back when we do Q&A, but we're going to turn it over to David now. Okay. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for coming to see the talk. You can't hear me? Now you can? Okay, I'm going to have to, I've been told I have to stay close to the microphone. Okay, so the name of my talk is Beekeeping Around Here, Philadelphia Beekeeping in the mid-2020s. Let's see if we can make this okay. Who am I? I'm Dave Harrod. My company is Beak Daddy LLC. I've been beekeeping for 18 years. Most of that time I did it as a hobby. In the last couple of years, I've sort of quit my other jobs and do beekeeping pretty much exclusively. I'm the president of the Philadelphia Beekeepers Guild. I was also one of the founding members. This is my second term as president, which is ending. You still can't hear me. I don't know. Claire, can you turn it up? If I stay this close, that works. Okay. I'm going to try to listen for the boom. My beekeeping company, I manage about 60 colonies, various apiaries around the city. I sell honey and other bee products, mostly honey though. I provide beekeeping services. So if anybody needs their bees kept, you can call me. I'm not a scientist, an entomologist, a historian, or a naturalist of any sort. And I just noticed that I don't have access to my notes here. So I'm going to have to, this is going to be a bit of a improvisation. So what am I going to talk about? I'm going to talk about when you would see bees and why you would be seeing them. I'm going to talk about some of the bees that are not honeybees. As a beekeeper, I am exclusively involved with honeybees. Then I'm going to talk about a little bit about beekeeping in Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Beekeepers Guild. And then a little bit, the weakest part of my talk is the end. What can you do to help the bees? But I'll try to make some useful suggestions there. So, seeing bees. When do you see bees? For some reason, the Philadelphia 311 service decided that if anybody called about insects or stinging insects at all, they would give them our phone number. So without much pre-arrangement, we've started to get a lot of calls about bees in Philadelphia. So this talk is, I will touch on beekeeping and bees a little bit, but it's not so much about beekeeping as when you would see bees as a non-beekeeper and what they might be doing, what you might be seeing. So what you see and when you see it is driven by the life cycle of the colony. With honeybees, the organism is the colony. It's called a superorganism. So the individual bees are almost like cells in that superorganism. And the behavior of the superorganism is what drives what we see and what we do. So what you see here is the population curve for a typical bee colony. This is this could be a colony could be much bigger than this. In this picture, it tops out at about 50,000. But the colony's population at the lowest point is about 1,000 bees. So, or about 10,000 bees, which is not very many. But those bees manage to get the colony through the winter and that peak in the summer. So let's look at something else I have here. These are the key events that drive our seasons throughout the year. We have 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices. We just passed our autumnal equinox. So we're coming into winter, as everybody knows, and the bees are going towards their dormant state. So in the wintertime, the bees are dormant. They stay in the hive and they eat the honey that they gathered through the season. So that's why they gather honey, is so that they can basically not need anything from the landscape through the winter. In the spring, starting in late March, is our primary nectar flow in Philadelphia. The largest source of nectar for honeybees is the trees. So when the maples start to bloom in March, that's really when the bees start to take off. And when the bees take off, that's called swarm season. Now you can see that the bees population here is increasing rapidly. The size of the colony quadruples over about 2 months. And the reason that what the bees are trying to accomplish in this time of the year is to split the colony, to swarm and establish a new colony. So when a beekeeper talks about swarms, a beekeeper is talking about this reproductive behavior. The colony sends out the old queen and half of the workers, and they go look for a new cavity. They leave the half of the workers and all the nurse bees are left behind with new queen cells, and that old cavity, which is already reliable, will get a new queen who will continue the colony's life in that cavity. You won't see those bees, but you will see the bees that have left to find a new cavity. And that's a swarm. It looks like this. I have more pictures. And this happens in the spring. Then as the summer goes on, when the colonies are at their height, you don't see swarms anymore, but you'll see robbing and you'll see some other behaviors that I will talk about. Then we'll see beehive in a tree season. And this is when we get lots of calls about bald-faced hornets nests. So from July on, almost all the calls we get are for bald-faced hornets, and I'll talk about them a little bit. Then there's a small fall nectar flow. As you can see, the bees population is going down pretty rapidly this time of year. It'll stabilize at about 10,000 bees, and that will be the dormant season. So that's the life cycle of the colony, and that's what drives what you might see as a non-beekeeper. So this is a picture, a video of a swarm on the wing, so to speak. I have a hobby of making slow motion videos of my bees. And this is this is at one of my apiaries, and this is a swarm of bees from one of my hives that is flying all around and getting ready to find a new spot. So when they initially come out of the hive, they just fly around like this. It's a really amazing experience to be surrounded by all those bees. And there's real time speed at the end there. So this is a swarm, a different swarm, not the first one. And this is called bivouacking. So if you see a bunch of bees hanging on a tree or on a car or on the side of a house or on a bicycle, what the bees are doing here is they're essentially camping out and looking for a new cavity. And if you look at these, at what the bees are doing here, you'll see that some of them are actually doing the waggle dance and telling the other bees in the cluster that they've found a good cavity, that they should go check out the new cavity. The more bees that decide on one cavity, eventually through a process of consensus, the cluster will decide, okay, we're going to go over there. And sometimes they get there and they decide they don't like it and they find another place. But that's the process that they go through to determine a new location. The behavior of the scouts that are looking for the hive is actually interesting. They'll go into the cavity. They actually walk the whole thing and measure it, check it for pests, check it for resources, check it for other desirable traits. And the different bees that find different clusters will sort of compete with each other to promote the space that they found and try to get the bees to go to their space. So that was the reproductive swarm. That's what you see in the spring. You see those up until June, pretty much around the summer solstice. Right after the summer solstice, that pretty much stops. And around here, it's probably not connected to the solstice itself. It's because that's when our resources dry up. Our main nectar flow pretty much ends in around the 1st of June or in early June. Sometimes it can go longer. This year, we didn't have a really hard dearth. Dearth is when there's nothing blooming. There's nothing for the bees to eat. So this year we didn't have a hard dearth, but most years we do. And that's when they stop swarming. But this is, I think if you might all say this is a swarm of bees. What I've learned from answering these phone calls is that to everybody who's not a beekeeper, any large number of bees is a swarm. And so this is just foraging. So the boxes in the video are honey supers that I've taken the honey out of them and left them there for the bees to clean out. And they clean these out very enthusiastically. All the bees from all the colonies around will come and get there as much as they can possibly get. It's interesting that before the nectar flow stops, you can leave honey out and the bees will completely ignore it. They much prefer honey. They much prefer nectar over honey. But once the nectar is no longer available, they go after honey rather vigorously. All right. This also looks exactly like a swarm. But these guys were found exactly 2 years ago on October 9th in Chestnut Hill. And this is not a hive this is not group of bees that's they're trying to find a new home, but the reason is not because they're very successful and they've outgrown their own home. It's because something has attacked their home and made it unlivable. So we have a big problem with a pest called a small hive beetle, and they will drive the bees out of their home if they take over. And so in the fall, you'll find these little tiny swarms, but they're out there not because they're reproducing, they're out there taking a last ditch chance at survival. And these guys actually did survive. I put them in a box and fed them a lot of sugar, and they made it through the winter. I think they're actually still alive. So let's see, I feel like I'm missing things, but here we go. Now, beehive in a tree season, that's our favorite. So these are mostly pictures that people have sent us of the beehives in their trees or on their houses. These are bald-faced hornets, which is actually a wasp, and they make these nests. And they start these nests in the early spring, and by July or so, they're big enough that people start to notice them. When we lose a few leaves and the foliage thins out, people start to see them, and they call us, and well, they call 311, and 311 gives them our number. And we have to tell them these are hornets, they're not bees. Beekeepers do not come to take these away. Honeybees cannot be killed legally. You can't spray or exterminate honeybees, and you really don't want to for a number of reasons. Hornets, on the other hand, are fair game, and most people will kill them. I've heard that they can be relocated. I've heard that even people will even pay for them, so I'm going to look into that. But for the venom, but for the most part, if you have a hornet's nest and you really need to get rid of it, you'll need to call a beekeeper. Some beekeepers will remove them. The Philadelphia Bee Company is one that will remove them. Most beekeepers won't touch them, but exterminators will kill them. You really shouldn't, though. I mean, the bald-faced hornets are more aggressive than honeybees, but for the most part, they're harmless. They will come after you if you get really close to their nests. But if you are not getting harassed or stung by them, that you probably won't. And they all die in the winter. So like almost like the other hornets and wasps, the queen survives. The queen comes out and finds a warm place to basically hibernate through the winter. And the queen on her own starts this nest and starts to build this colony. And that's why it takes, a few months. It takes until July for them to become big enough for people to notice them. So how do you see bees? I hope you can see them in this video. The way to see bees, the way to see them anytime you want to see them, is to find a bunch of flowers and stick your face into it and stand still and look. You can't really see them if you're moving. It's really rather amazing. If you'll be walking by some flowers and you say no bees there, but if you stop and look and let your eyes work, you'll start to see more and more. I did it just now out here with some of the asters that are blooming, and there's bees on them even at 6 o'clock in the evening on a cold night in Wissahickon Valley. So this is called a bottle brush buckeye, and it's a native plant. It's at Aubrey Arboretum at the Cope House, next to the Cope House. If you ever have a chance to go stick your face in this, it's a wonderful experience. It's covered with every kind of pollinator you can imagine, and both native and honeybees. So Honeybees are not native bees. But I recommend this practice to anybody who's interested in seeing more pollinators, because you'll never know what you'll see in there. So these are representative of some of the 437 species of bee that we have in Pennsylvania. The honeybees, you don't even see them in this picture. They're one of the 4 Metallitidae species that we have. Honeybees are not native to North America. They were brought by colonizers, and they've become what's the word? There's a word for something there that has become ubiquitous, but they're not native. The native bees you'll see are mostly ground dwelling. Some of them are twig dwelling. Some of them, like the bumblebees, build nests. Of course, we have the carpenter bees and other bees that drill holes. But most of these bees are solitary. Most of them are, some of them are evolved to only forage on very specific plants. Most of them are generalists. Let's see if I can do this. This is just to compare bees and wasps. So I'll talk a little more about wasps here, but bees, the 2 on the right are bees, and the 2 on the left are wasps. They have a lot in common. They're both members of the Hymenoptera family, which includes ants. They have a similar body structure. They have these membranous wings, which is what the name comes from. And but essentially bees tend to be hairy, tend to be fuzzy, and wasps tend to be smooth and shiny. Oh shoot, I made a mistake. All right. So these are paper wasps. A lot of the wasps are paper wasps. They can be the individual paper wasps or the yellow jackets. There are many different flavors of yellow jackets. These are the most common, probably, wasps. They come in different sizes and different species. They are all predators. And they so wasps are really good. You know, they eat a lot of pest insects. They eat. I've seen piles of spotted lanternfly wings under a wasp nest, under bald-faced hornets nests. So they do a lot of good, but they in the fall they all die. So in the fall, especially yellow jackets become really annoying. And that's because they're all starving to death. So you can feel sorry for them. You don't. I do. Oh, shoot, I did it again. All right. One last picture of bald-faced hornets here. These are my favorites. These are actually yellow jackets too. They're not hornets, which I don't understand, but we've talked a little bit about them already. All right, now. So are honeybees good for the environment? This is actually a question that a lot of people are asking these days. Beekeeping became very popular, and so now there's a little bit of a backlash against beekeeping. I actually haven't detected it in Philadelphia, but you know, in places that are more advanced than us, they're questioning the value of bees and beekeeping. Honeybees are livestock, so our bees the bees that I keep and the bees that I'm talking about are really livestock. So our bees are not in trouble. We manage them. You know, just the same way that chickens aren't in trouble, honeybees aren't in trouble. But beekeepers may be good for something. And I say that because there is a fairly interesting body of research that talks about how bees and beekeeping, honeybees can act as a sort of a gateway bug. to greater appreciation of the environment and greater appreciation of other bugs. I mean, for me personally, I'm much more aware of what is flowering since I became a beekeeper. So I'm very sensitive to how the air smells and what the trees look like and what's coming into blossom and coming into season. And you know, I look forward to the Japanese knotweed flowering in the fall. um, but beekeepers and bees and honeybees in an urban environment can, one of the benefits that we have is that it's a way that people connect with nature. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. As far as the direct scientific evidence of whether honeybees hurt or help native populations, it's mixed. There's studies on like islands where large honeybee populations have a negative impact on the native insects, especially when there's something like a hurricane and resources are severely limited. There's plenty of evidence, there's also evidence that bees will increase forage overall. So in a sense, lift all boats. Bees are pollinators, of course, but they're also fertilizers. So bees are little flying poop machines. So they're not just pollinating and gathering stuff, they're also fertilizing the environment. I just heard another beekeeper talk, and she showed a picture of where she started an apiary and basically on rocks and with no topsoil at all. And over 10 years that the bees are there, there's now completely the whole area has grass growing and plants growing. And so the bees are actually, you know, they're not just taking from the environment, they're part of the entire circle. There's lots of research that shows that urban and suburban landscapes can be excellent for insect diversity, better than some of the agricultural landscapes we have now. So monocrop agriculture is sort of terrible for insects. It's you know, the forage isn't available for them most of the year. They use a lot of chemicals, and all of that is very bad for insects. So and urban environments, especially if we can discourage chemical use, are very good environments for insects and bees. But too many honeybees can be bad for the neighbors. They can be a nuisance. So you got to take care of your neighbors and give them honey, and you have to be responsible and not keep too many bees in one place, which is a problem I keep struggling with. So who are these responsible urban beekeepers? Well, I'm the head of the Philadelphia Beekeepers Guild and one of the founding members. And I know a lot about the Philadelphia Beekeepers Guild and the Philadelphia the beekeepers that are in it. Not everybody in the guild is, not everybody in the city is in the guild. There's a lot of beekeepers in the city that are not guild members. But these pictures are all genuine urban beekeepers that I've taken over the years. Sometimes they're not even anywhere near bees. This is a class where we're demonstrating making candles. This is one of our events where we talk to people about bees. This is at Aubrey Arboretum. That's where our headquarters is. We also sell honey. This is our Honey Fest at Bartram's Garden a few years ago. And this would be at Wick House. And Honey Fest is an annual event we've been running for 15 years. And we have these celebrations of bees and honey, and we usually 1 or 2 different venues over the course of a weekend. But we've done that for a long time, and that's a great way that lets our beekeepers sell a little bit of their honey. This is one of our beekeepers working in the apiary. This goes into slow motion here. This was early in this spring, and I think the reason the bees are all hanging out on his back is basically they're cold. If it's not warm, the bees will land on you just for rest and warmth, and they're certainly not trying to sting anyone. Or this is not an aggressive behavior at all. This is just they're essentially sheltering on his back. And you can just see kind of what we're doing when we're inspecting a hive. He's looking at this frame of bees that he's pulled out of the box and trying to see what's going on. So there's this idea of beekeeping for the city, and I wanted to talk about this one particular event that happened recently. I call it the uncanny bee beard. So this is Don Shump, this fellow. He's the proprietor of the Philadelphia Bee Company. And he's probably the most established beekeeper in Philadelphia. He's had the Philadelphia Bee Company for probably 20 years. And he sells honey and does bee removals and catches a lot of bees. Removals are a big part of his business. And removals are when the bees move into your wall and somebody needs to cut them out and take them away. That's when you can't kill them, because if they're living in your wall and you kill them, it's like having a dead raccoon in your wall. And they'll rot and stink. And then you'll also have honey. So you don't kill your bees. Get a beekeeper to come and take it out, even though it's expensive. I'm just going to roll this and start talking about it. So Don does this thing at Honeyfest, and he's done this. Oh shoot, I did that again. So a bee beard is when a beekeeper takes a bunch of bees, preferably young nurse bees that don't actually sting yet. And he ties a cage. This little thing on his chin is a cage with the queen bee in it. So to make the beard, you put that cage on your chin and you dump bees on you, and the bees will all try to gather around the queen. And so let's roll this. Oh shoot. I knew this would be a problem, because controlling it is so Don has been doing this for a long time, and he has a pitch that goes along this. It's a show, and here at this point in the show, Don has been talking to the audience about what's going to happen, and he's told the audience all sorts of horror stories about getting stung on the inside of his throat, and he spins a spell over the audience. So this year at Wick House, when we had Honeyfest, it was a day when the weather was very variable. There was clouds moving in. It rained for a few minutes after we started. It was still windy. It was still cold. And this was what was going on. And I wish you could hear the sound here, but let's just watch for a second. So he's explaining what he's doing, and he's talking about how the bees aren't flying around. And now, here we go. So there's a lot of bees still on the board there. That's not ideal. And so he asks Austin, who is his assistant here, to shake the bees on, and he says, no, shake them right on top of my head. Now that's what he always does, and it's not necessarily a problem, but in this particular case, it was windy. And let's see what happens here. So Austin is dutifully shaking them on his head, and oops. So if you notice, he shakes them forward and thousands of bees start flying around. Now, this was what was uncanny about this was that by the time Don got to this point, everybody in the audience was used to the idea of a bee landing on them. Again, I wish you could hear this, because right now the bees are flying around, and remember the guy with the jacket in the cold? They're all landing on people. And you can see this is a board member, and he was trying to get some bees off some kids. But bees are just everywhere, and there's no screaming. There's no distress. There's no running. We move on to the selfie portion of the bee beard without any problems. These people are all taking bees off of their bodies. She's got bees all over her. And this was like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen in my life, because I was expecting running and screaming and horror. And instead, everybody was going, a bee landed on me. This is so cool. Look how cute they are. And this went on for a while, and I'm just walking around there. I'm covered in bees. I'm taking bees off of people. And I'm wondering, when is the spell going to be broken? When are people going to start screaming? But they never did. Everybody was just so happy to have bees on them. It was wonderful. And in sociology, there's this term I think called rapprochement, and it means getting close to nature. So it means it refers to when somebody with not much experience with nature, not necessarily close to nature, suddenly recognizes that there's something wonderful here and kind of accepts it and takes it in. And I think that is really the thing that is the most important thing we do as the Philadelphia Beekeepers Guild. It's the idea of being available and being present and having these events where people are able to get close to bees, experience bees, and sometimes get right into the hive, and and do it without fear and without a negative experience. So as the Guild, we do a lot of things. We have classes, we have monthly meetings, we have online bee chats. We have services for our beekeepers. We have Honey Fest, we go to events. But I think all of that stuff, builds up to this opportunity for people to kind of see nature in a new way and connect with living things in a new way. And to, most people are terrified of bees, and the experience of being close to them, touching them, looking at them without fear is a real revelation for people. Okay, so I'm not sure how I'm doing on time or if I've gone too quickly, but this is the shortest part of my presentation because, like I said, I'm just a beekeeper. I'm not a scientist or an expert in any way, but what can we do? Native plants, native plants are the three most important things that we can do to help insects. So when I talk about helping bees, I'm really talking about helping insects and native insects. There's been a pretty severe drop-off in flying insect populations over the last, I don't know, my lifetime, which is 66 years at this point. But when I was young and when I learned to drive, bugs on the windshield was an issue. It's not really an issue anymore, at least not around here. I mean, you couldn't actually see. You'd have to get out and scrape them off. I mean, you still get a few, but it's not like that anymore. But native plants are important because many species of bees and wasps and other insects, I'm not, at this point, we're talking about insects and not bees, have co-evolved with the plants that they feed on. So there are a number of species that can't cope without the specific native plants that they feed on. There are also many generalist foragers like honeybees. Honeybees will forage on anything that they can find. For the most part, though, they don't forage on the plants that have evolved specialized relationships. So anyway, that's the most important thing that any of us can do. I don't have to really tell the Friends of Wissahickon about the importance of native plants. I mean, you guys are one of the great organizations in doing that. There are also, as I mentioned before, many studies that show that the urban landscapes are excellent for bees and honeybees. For all bees. And our speaker in November was the assistant in the Bee Beard video. He's getting a PhD in geography and urban studies, and he's going to be speaking in November about his work on bees and in urban landscapes. What else? Keeping honeybees is probably not the second thing you want to do or the third thing you want to do. It can be difficult, it can be disappointing, it can be expensive. I'm not saying don't do it, I'm not saying leave it to the experts, but if you want to make an impact on native bee populations or native insects, honeybees is not the first thing you would do. And if you want to get close to bees without keeping them, we at the Guild will give you chances to do that. You probably shouldn't be using mosquito controls. I know that this audience probably doesn't use mosquito controls, but at a conference I attended this summer, there was actually a U.S. Geological Survey entomologist who was talking about, he had done a survey of the videos that these mosquito control places will post on YouTube. And he found that most of them were talking about using pyrethroid in the insecticides, and those kill everything. They talked about spraying these insecticides on blossoming flowers, which is a no-no. They talked about it spraying them directly on bees. And so if you're hiring somebody to spray your yard, they're probably going to kill everything in it, not just the mosquitoes. So if you do have bee problems, you can call a beekeeper. We'll be happy to help. But that's about it. I mean, obviously, I think you should support your local beekeeper. And then I think consider bees and pollinators when planting. There's an organization called the Homegrown National Park, which is run by a guy named Doug Tallamy, who's a professor at University of Delaware. That's an excellent organization, and they will give you advice on not just planting native plants, but which native plants are actually the best ones to plant to support pollinators, because they're not all equal. And then of course, urban farming, I consider myself part of the urban farming community. So supporting urban farming is a way to support pollinators. And of course, there's many great organizations like this one and the Horticultural Society that do a lot of good work around supporting bees. So I have a few links to other resources, but that's my presentation. And I guess I'm supposed to have a call to action at the end. So support your local beekeeper.
All right. Thank you, David. And now I know we have questions. We're going to take some questions from the room. You've been with us before. You know, we have to repeat the question. So you'll ask it and then I will repeat it. Then we'll get our answer. And then after we get through the room, I have a few questions from our friends on Zoom. For our friends on Zoom, if you haven't already, there is a link in the chat where you can submit your question and I will get it here on my phone and ask it. So, all right, over here.
So you had a slide there with the honey sale. I use honey with my tea, and I feel guilty after listening to your talk.
Good.
And the reason I feel guilty in my question is, seems like the nectar is the preferred food, and the honey is the fallback, if I understand correctly. But if we're consuming all this honey, are we leaving our bees in the lurch?
The question is, if we're consuming all the wonderful honey, are we leaving the bees without something that they need?
So we beekeepers don't let the bees starve. So that's probably the most important thing that we do. So we don't take all the honey. We leave enough for the bees. Beekeeping as a you know, an art is about making these colonies unnaturally large so that they collect an unnaturally large amount of honey, so that so that we can take a lot of it and leave them with enough to get that 10,000 bee population through the winter without a problem. And then if we inadvertently take more than we should have, we feed them sugar, which is has been shown to be an excellent food for them. Actually, probably healthier than honey, but we make sure that they don't. So you needn't feel guilty about having honey in your tea.
Okay, over here.
I say that some people think that beekeeping is not good. And the little side question, why are the boxes always like a pretty pastel color?
Okay, we have two questions. One, David mentioned in his talk that there's been a little bit of a backlash against beekeeping, maybe in some places, not in our fair city though. And also a question about the colors of the hives or the boxes that you put them in.
So I think that it's just a backlash. You know, urban beekeeping became very popular and got a lot of press and a lot of exposure. So I think there were people were asking, well, I mean, it's intuitive to imagine that there's a limited amount of nectar out there, and that if you have too many honeybees, they will eat all the nectar and not leave anything for the bumblebees and the sweat bees and the mason bees. That's probably not the case. There hasn't been, like I said, in some cases where there's a really severely limited geography, like an island, and there's a catastrophic event like a hurricane that knocks all the trees down, that can be bad for everybody. But they haven't shown that they've done. I've seen a study in the Washington D.C. area where they have a lot of urban beekeepers, and they compared populations of urban bees to native bees, and they really didn't find any negative impacts from urban bees at any level. So I don't think I don't think urban bees or urban bees are a big problem. I think certainly pesticides and habitat loss and climate change are much bigger problems. But every time something gets popular, there's a backlash against it eventually. And I think that's what the backlash against beekeeping has been. And as far as the boxes, a lot of beekeepers will go to the the hardware store or the big box store and buy the paint that was mixed incorrectly, and they sell it for $10 a gallon or something. And so a lot of us use that whatever colors we can get for cheap, and that's what colors our hives end up.
Yes.
When the colony gets formed and they're hanging out, and then they have to, that will be thrown out to find a new home. How long does that take for a new home back or a new hive?
Okay, we have a question about when the bees leave a home, how long it takes them to find a new home and get that all established.
That's an excellent question. It can take anywhere from a few hours. I mean, in some cases, they will find a new cavity before they swarm, and they'll come out and just go into a new cavity. If that doesn't happen, it can take anywhere from a few hours to a few days. They can actually hang out there for several days. When they're doing that, they're very vulnerable, though. A rainstorm can kill them. They can be any bad weather can kill them. So most swarms don't survive. So in natural conditions, the survival rate for swarms is only 20%. So that's why that's why it's actually an act of kindness to call a beekeeper and have them take care of those bees. Because if a beekeeper takes them, they've got at least a 50% chance.
Yes, Debbie.
So NPR recently had an interview with a beekeeper who's a transport beekeeper. And he said his wife watched his beekeeping clothes and laundry detergent. And when he got to the place, he was covered in bees. So are there perfumes and things we should avoid if we don't want to have bees coming at us, or even why?
Okay, the question is, are there perfumes or laundry detergents or other scents that we might have on us that would attract bees? And maybe we want to attract the bees, but maybe we don't. So
early on in my beekeeping, I was installing bees, and a guy came to watch, and he he kept getting stung. The bees, like, they weren't coming after anybody, but they were just going after him and stinging him consistently. And he actually admitted to wearing Axe body spray. So that's I didn't hear that report. They will be attracted to floral scents. I mean, that's what they're looking for. That's why flowers have scent, is to attract pollinators. But I don't know, I didn't hear that story, and I don't have any specific recommendations. What beekeepers try to do is we try to not stink when we go out to keep the bees. So bees have an evolved dislike of stinky, hairy animals like bears. So so if the less you remind the bees of a bear, the better off you are. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but those are my best bee and scent stories.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could tell us anything about, bees live in the ground and have a constantly expanding hole right at the base of our vegetable garden.
All right, we have a question about a particular, I think, group of bees that have nested in the ground near a vegetable garden, and it seems to be getting bigger and bigger. What do you know about it?
The bees that nest in the ground are mostly solitary. So you'll see them coming out in the early spring, the little mason bees and ground dwelling bees. What you have is probably a yellow jacket's nest. So if you don't think it's a yellow jacket nest, we'll have to look at pictures, because there are no bees that have large nests in the ground. Only yellow jackets do that, or only wasps. So I would have to see pictures and do a little bit more work on that.
The population of bees during the cycle, you mentioned the robbing. Describe that in more detail.
Okay, we have a question for more detail on the robbing phase.
So when around July, around the peak of the summer, the bees population is at a maximum. When the floral resources drop off, they will start looking for anything they can find that's sweet and that they can bring back to the hive. One of the things that they can find is a weaker bee colony. So if a colony is weak for whatever reason, doesn't have a large population, but does have some resources saved up, stronger colonies from around that weaker colony will invade it and steal all their resources and sometimes kill the colony. So robbing is a serious problem. It can be a serious problem for beekeepers. You can lose your hives if uncontrolled robbing starts. And it's a problem in the autumn. Like it's harder to work on bees in the autumn because they are much more likely to start robbing and hurt each other. Is that enough of an explanation?
Right, we have a couple questions from Zoom we're done in the room. All right, I'm gonna come over here if I feel like it.
You're not booming. I think you need to be.
Do I need to be closer? Is that better? Okay, my apologies. So do you need to be a beekeeper to be a member of the guild? I feel like probably yes, but I'll let you answer it.
No, not at all. You don't need to be a member of the guild. You don't even need to live in Philadelphia. Anybody can be a member of the guild. We don't have any, we don't try to keep anybody out.
And tell people how they can become a member.
If you would like to become a member, you go to our website, which is at phillybeekeepers.org. And you sign up. There's a $15 membership if you're a student or an old person like me. And there's other memberships that there's several different memberships levels. If you are a beekeeper and you want to use the honey kitchen or sell your honey through Honeyfest, you pay more. But most of the people who do that make their money back. So.
And then the last question I'm going to answer because someone wanted to know, what is calling 311? I can answer that one. So 311 is the non-emergency system in Philadelphia for reporting a problem, whether it's power line down on the road or bees where you think they shouldn't be, or trash in the park, or vandalism somewhere. So if you go on the city's website and you can file a 311, you can file it anonymously, but if you provide your contact information, you will get a tracking number. And I know sometimes we all feel we report things and nothing happens, but the 311 system does make it to people who can solve a problem, especially if you have that tracking number, then you can request follow-up. So that's what the 311 is. And the city is grateful to have partners like the Beekeepers Guild to refer people for solutions, and FOW certainly gets many fielded things as well from the 311 system. So. All right, if there's no further questions, I think we should give David another round of applause. And yes, and maybe if you have individual questions, you might stick around for a minute or two, and we still have some cheese, so encourage everyone to eat it up and have a great evening. Thank you all for coming tonight.